During the summer of 2010, an oppressive heat wave blanketed much of Europe. In western Russia, the heat wave proved exceptionally deadly. In Moscow alone, the city experienced temperatures well above 100 degrees. For many days in a row, Moscow and other parts of European Russia suffered triple-digit weather, which directly contributed to around 15,000 deaths. Elsewhere in the country, wildfires ate up more than 2,900 square miles in the western and central regions. As if this wasn't bad enough, the heat wave caused a major drought that destroyed more than a quarter of Russia's entire grain harvest. All told, economists have claimed that the heat wave cost the already poor country over $15 billion. The island nation of Haiti has not only witnessed its fair share of natural disasters, but it is one of the poorest nations in the Western Hemisphere, if not the world. On January 12, 2010, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck 15 miles southwest of the capital city of Port-au-Prince. Until 2010, Haiti hadn't experienced an earthquake of this magnitude since the 18th century. In the aftermath of the disaster, accurate statistics proved hard to come by. The Haitian government officially listed the death toll at 300,000. Millions more were displaced as a result of the earthquake, which geologists have blamed on movements of the Caribbean tectonic plate eastward. During the recent presidential election in the United States, this disaster made news once again, as part of revelations concerning the Clinton Foundation. In particular, several authors accused the Clinton Foundation of pocketing over $3.9 million in aid, without providing a fraction of the promised housing, food, and clean water. The tsunami of 2004 affected an incredible number of countries. In total, the nations of India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, the Maldives, Somalia, and Malaysia were directly impacted by the disaster. Beside widespread damage to infrastructure, the disaster killed a staggering 230,000 people. Diseases such as cholera, dysentery, and typhoid spread during the rush to bury the dead. Furthermore, starvation and hunger proved to be serious problems in the aftermath. Finally, the tsunami did untold economic damage throughout the region, and it noticeably hurt tourism, one of the largest sources of revenue in the Indian Ocean region. All in all, the 2004 tsunami is one of the worst disasters in history. 2016 has been a rough year for central Italy. Beginning in August, a series of earthquakes and aftershocks shook the regions just north of Rome. The first earthquake on August 24th caused massive damage to the towns of Amatrice, Accumoli, and Pescara del Tronto. Approximately 300 people died in the August earthquake. Another 400 were injured, while close to 5,000 people were left homeless. A little over 2 months later, 3 more earthquakes struck the same regions. On October 26, the medium-sized earthquake caused tremors to be felt in Rome, while several houses in the region of Marseille collapsed. That same day, another earthquake struck not far from the epicenter of the August earthquake. Finally, on October 30th, the town of Norcia was epicenter of yet another earthquake. During this final disaster, the village of Arquata del Tronto was destroyed. All told, 3 people died of heart attacks as a result of those earthquakes. As reported on November 22, 2016, 6 meters of the coastline on New Zealand's South Island was lifted out of the water. Included in this movement were parts of the Waipapa Bay Reef. Such destruction in the wake of November 14th's 7.8 magnitude tremor is to be expected. The earthquake caused massive damage to infrastructure and left thousands without power. Furthermore, 2 people died as either a direct result of the tremor or due to the landslides and tsunami that the earthquake caused. A little over a week after this first earthquake, another disaster struck near Palmerston North. Thankfully, few casualties have been reported, but damage to property remains extensive. During this year alone, New Zealand has suffered over a dozen earthquakes and aftershocks, which have seriously impacted not only the country's economy and tourist industry, but also the day-to-day lives of its citizens. This was one disaster that most knew was coming. Despite the fact that shelters had been built in the wake of a 1970 storm, the citizens of Bangladesh were still tragically unprepared when a cyclone touched down on August 29, 1991. Known as Cyclone 2B, the storm was first recorded as it moved north through the Bay of Bengal. A week after the storm appeared on radar, the cyclone landed on the southeastern coast of the Chittagong region of Bangladesh. This cyclone proved extremely deadly, in part because Bangladesh is prone to flooding. Earlier in 1970, an estimated 300 to 500,000 people died as a result of a strong cyclone. The 1991 storm killed 150,000 and caused an approximate $1.5 million in damages. If there's one silver lining to this entire story, it's the fact that a cyclone in 1997 was far less deadly because of the improvements made in the wake of the 1991 cyclone. Very early on the morning of April 18, 1906, a large magnitude earthquake shook the Bay Area of California. The earthquake's vibrations were felt as far north as Eureka and as far south as Paso Robles in the Salinas Valley. San Francisco suffered the most damage, however. According to most estimates, 80% of San Francisco was destroyed, and around 3,000 people died during both the earthquake and the fires that followed it. In the immediate aftermath of the earthquake, further damage was done by ill-trained firefighters. On a few occasions, firefighters used dynamite to demolish damaged buildings, but wound up creating uncontrollable fires. Some business owners deliberately set their stores on fire because most buildings in San Francisco were only insured for fire damage. Despite the fact that the city was placed under a strict curfew and U.S. soldiers patrolled the streets, widespread looting and some rioting did occur. As such, Mayor Eugene Schmitz issued a shoot-to-kill order to police officers and soldiers in efforts to curb looting. Later investigations revealed that many of the looters were soldiers with the 22nd Infantry Regiment. The avalanche that engulfed Peru in 1970 began as the result of a devastating earthquake. On May 31, 1970, an undersea earthquake struck the Peruvian coast near the regions of Ancash and La Libertad. When the earthquake's tremors touched Mount Huascarán, it caused a large amount of snow and ice to shift and eventually become a massive avalanche. The towns of Yungay and Rarajirca were buried under a sea of white. By the time the avalanche reached Yungay, it consisted of between 50 to 100 million cubic meters of water, rocks, and mud. The Huascarán avalanche alone killed around 20,000 people, thus making it one of, if not the deadliest avalanche in history. On a larger scale, the earthquake, avalanche, and tsunami killed between 66,000 and 70,000 people. The Galveston hurricane of 1900 is still well known today because of the extensive damage it caused to life and property. The storm remains the deadliest single day in U.S. history. On September 8th, a Category 4 storm consisting of winds in excess of 145 miles per hour reached the coastal city of Galveston, Texas. The storm, which began off the coast of West Africa, was not predicted to make landfall near eastern Texas. This prediction proved to be terribly wrong. The strong winds caused massive flooding throughout the city. In the end, Galveston was raised by 17 feet, and a sea wall of 10 square miles was erected. At the time, Galveston was seen as the up-and-coming city in the Lone Star State. However, after the hurricane, investors decided to funnel their money into Houston instead. Overall, the Galveston hurricane killed between 6,000 and 12,000 people. When the Yangtze River in China flooded in August of 1931, it produced the deadliest disaster in recorded history. Following the peak of the floods on August 18th, the extent of the damage was surveyed. All told, over 500 square miles of land was flooded, and well over 500,000 people were driven from their homes. Rising water and heavy rainfall swamped a large amount of fertile land, thus causing widespread crop failure. Many residents of the cities of Wuhan and Nanjing, which depended on the rice that was grown in the surrounding countryside, starved to death. Others throughout China died due to disease. Because of an ongoing civil war at the time, the Chinese government had done little to provide flood control measures for the Yangtze, which was known to flood frequently. As a result, the floods pretty much went unopposed. 3.7 million people died, either directly or indirectly as a result of the flooding.